Hello, new DU students and families. It is an honor to host you today in this digital workshop. My name is Heather Martin, and I am a professor in the University Writing Program, and I also direct the first year seminar program at the University of Denver. So in today's workshop, I'll share a little bit about my first year seminar and walk you through a few activities that I use to help our students chart inspired journeys for themselves at the University of Denver. So every first-time first-year student will enroll in a first-year seminar in the fall quarter, their first quarter at the university. First-year seminars are taught by faculty members from across disciplines on a whole range of fascinating topics. So this fall, we have courses on nanoscience, Colorado rivers, the Sand Creek Massacre, musical appropriation, and so on. These classes invite students to dig deeply into complex topics alongside passionate professors. They have an opportunity to connect with their peers, and they also learn about resources available to them on campus as students. Generally speaking, students love their first year seminars. So be sure to check out all of the different course descriptions for all the different first year seminars that will be offered this fall when you are preparing for registration. So my first year seminar that I teach is part of Chancellor Hafner's new four-dimensional student experience, which really works to inspire students to be resilient and courageous and also connected through both activities that occur in the classroom and outside the classroom. And the course that I teach is called Design Your DU. And so when we think about these four different student dimensions, we think of the core dimension as intellectual growth, of course, because we're college level learners, but we also engage with character and professional development and aspirations, and also issues of well-being. So today I'm going to walk you through a couple of activities and writing prompts that will help you think about a couple of these dimensions and plan your inspired journey. So this first activity will engage with the dimension of character development. So who you are and what you do really does matter. And in order to live in alignment with your values, you really need to have a clear sense of what exactly those core values are. So this first activity will be a core values activity that I do with my students. So for this first activity, I'll ask you to choose a couple, three, four, five values that really resonate with you, feel really core and really important to who you are as a person, that really resonate. So if you can see the list that I'm projecting on the screen, that's great. Or you can choose from that, or you can look at any number of other core values lists that can be found with a simple Google search. So step one is to locate those core values. So pause the video and take an opportunity to identify 1 to 5 core values. Okay, so now that you've chosen some core values, I'd like you to do some writing on one of those values that feels really resonant with who you are. So for that one core value, pick that one core value, and just do a little bit of writing. So the first thing I'd like you to write about is explain why did you choose this core value? So why did you choose this among all the others? And then when I asked you to choose one of the set that you selected, why was this the one that you chose? So what is it about this particular value that really resonates with you? Next, I'd like you to think about a time when you really lived into this value and try to be as specific as you can and think about a particular incident. So, one of my core values is compassion. And so I have lots of opportunities to engage with compassion on a daily basis in dealing with my students, in dealing with my family, and also with my colleagues. So trying to think about a time when I was presented with a particular decision about how I wanted to react, and I chose compassion. So trying to think about what are some experiences you've had that have really engaged that core value in a positive way. And then finally, we're all works in progress. So sometimes, even though we have a core value, we're presented with opportunities where we just don't quite live into it in that moment. So think of another time where you feel like you didn't quite live into that core value. So once you've addressed those three questions, I'd like you to consider these next three. And that is, how does the core value manifest in your choices? So you've provided a specific case of when you felt you lived into that value and another time when you didn't, but thinking about how are you presented with opportunities in your life to decide to lean into or live into that core value. So when are those, what are those choices? When does this core value come up and you have a decision about how you want to handle it? So how does it manifest in your choices? How does it manifest in your education? So this one you can think about, perhaps the core value drives the decisions you make about the kinds of courses that you take, or the kinds of courses that you want to take, or the major or the discipline that you want to pursue. But thinking about, does the core value drive those choices? Or also, it could also mean that you have this core value. And so the way that you interact with your education or the way that you engage with others as it relates to your education is also informed by that core value. So how does that core value manifest in your education? And then finally, how does the core value manifest in your personal life? So how do you live into this core value when you're engaging with your friends or your family or in other kinds of social or interpersonal interactions? So how do you see that core value working in those kinds of situations? Once my students have done a deep dive into two or three of their core values and really interrogated when those moments come up, when they feel like they're living into that value, and other times when they feel like they're not quite um, following all the way through on that value, and how does it manifest in these different parts of their lives? So once they've done that deep dive and done that work to not only identify the values but also think about how they play out in their lives, I encourage my students to post those values in a visible location. The transition to college can be a real time of change. It can be a time of excitement. It can also be a time of stress. So really staying rooted in those core values and really reminding yourself of what is really important to you can really be a valuable practice. And then as you revisit your values over your first week, your first quarter, your first year at the university, you may have cause to add to the list or change the list a little bit. But again, the goal here is to think about aligning who you are at your core, these core values, with how you're engaging and interacting in the world. And so again, you have the values visible, you can see them, and then you can ask yourself questions as you move through your first year. How are you living into these values or not? When do these values feel engaged? When do you feel like they're coming up and they're relevant and they're making sense? And then sometimes they might be challenged. And that's something that you can expect in the college environment with people from all different places with all different kinds of values. There may be opportunities to grow, and those values may be challenged in certain circumstances. So trying to really stay clear on what those values are and what are those moments that relate to those values. So we take the values and then we start to think about this other dimension, and that is the dimension of professional development. And when we're talking about professional development, we're talking about career and profession. We're really looking ahead and thinking about how to find meaningful work that contributes to our communities and to our lives and families in ways that feel authentic, and in ways that feel true and rewarding. So one of the books that I teach in my first year seminar, that engages closely to professional development is a book called Designing Your Life. And it was written by two Stanford professors, Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. And one of the things that they say in their book is that they really reject this question that we often ask ourselves, and we're often asked by people in our lives who are helping us do our future planning. And that question is, what's your passion? And so the reason that they don't like that question, that they reject that question, what's your passion, is because they say that research shows that for most people, passion comes after they try something, discover they like it, and develop mastery, not before. To put it more succinctly, they say, passion is the result of good life design, not the cause. So, in short, they're arguing that we find our passion by doing, by trying things out and seeing what fits. So, to that end, they really recommend that students and other individuals thinking about their life plan or their life design, that they don't just choose one plan and set goals and try to accomplish that one plan, but rather they imagine lots of different options for their lives and try out and prototype small moves toward those plans to see what feels right. And so they recommend the process of creating an Odyssey plan. And they actually recommend creating 3 different Odyssey plans. And Odyssey plans are ways for you to look ahead and think what your life might look like or be like if you make certain decisions that are hopefully driven by your values and driven by your interests. So they recommend creating 3 different life plans. So the first life plan they call that thing you do. And that just means if you're someone like me who's already at work, that would mean what is it that you actually do? So for parents and family members who are participating in this workshop, it would be what are you doing now? What is your current career? What does your day-to-day look like? What are your goals look like on the current path that you're on? For students who are just about to join the university, you might think about if your guidance counselor asks you the question, well, what is it that you want to do with your life? This is life number one, right? If you go to your family reunion or you're on your family Zoom call and your aunt says, oh, you're going to college. What are you going to do? What are you going to do after college? What do you think? This is the plan, kind of the plan that might already be in the works. So that's the first life plan. So what does that look like? What is your profession? What does your day-to-day look like? What kind of work do you do? What does your life look like? That's life plan 1. The second Odyssey plan is life number 2. And life number 2 asks that you think about it would be that thing you do if thing 1 were suddenly gone. So if I'm doing the Odyssey plan, it's as if tomorrow I am no longer able to work at the University of Denver. My career as a professor is over for whatever reason. What does my life look like as a consequence of that? What is the other life that I want to plan? And the goal here is not to pick things that are kind of similar, right? So I would say, oh, well, I'll get a job as a professor at another school. The goal here is to be really creative and provide a diverse set of examples for these different Odyssey plans. So what would be plan B if plan A doesn't work out? And so what's another option? So maybe you had thought, well, I always wanted to do this and this is my plan, but what if that wasn't available to you? What then would be option number 2? So you want to major in something and you want to work toward a certain profession. What if that didn't work out? What would be that second plan? So that's number 2. And then finally, number 3 is the one that my students tend to have the most fun with, and I think kind of reveals the most interesting stuff for our conversations in class. And that is, what would you do if money or image were no object? So what life would you pursue if you were freed from the constraints of finances and incomes, and also freed from the sort of social and cultural pressures of having that tell us like that certain jobs are good and certain jobs are bad, or certain jobs are important and certain jobs are not important. So if you could free yourself from both money and those cultural expectations and um, uh, constrictions around what the value of jobs are, what would you do in that case? So take about 5 minutes with each of these different Odyssey plans and really try to think about what would those 3 very distinct and different lives look like for you if you were to choose them. Okay. So now that you have your 3 Odyssey plans, you want to just do a little bit of reflection and take a look back, not only at the plans, but also at the process and what the process of thinking through the plans revealed for you. So describe the process of creating the 3 Odyssey plans. What was challenging about creating the Odyssey plans? What was surprising? What did the process itself reveal for you? Look back at your plans and figure out which of the 3 was most interesting or exciting or practical. So start to create some ways of describing and filtering and separating your different plans, and try to think about which what each plan characterizes, how you can characterize each plan for you. And then finally, to relate to our earlier exercise, how do the plans intersect or align with your core values? So where do you see the core values that you identified earlier in these different plans? Do you see one more in one plan and not in another, or do you see them across all plans? So start to look for those values in your plans. So as an example, one of my former students, she did the Odyssey plan. I do this with my first year seminar students, and she created these 3 lives through this exercise. And so the first life, which was the one that she really had planned to pursue as a student at the University of Denver, she really wants to be a behavioral analyst in the behavioral analysis unit of the FBI, which I had not heard of, but she knew all about it. That was life plan 1, behavioral analyst for the FBI. Her second life plan was to be a social worker for children. And then her third life plan that freed her from the constrictions of money and status was to be a world traveler who makes a difference. And I thought these plans were all really interesting, but as we were talking, we noticed that all of her core values were engaged in each and every one of these plans. So we could still see her passion for justice. We could see her compassion and empathy reflected in each of these different life plans. And we also saw her real drive for service. So even though she had these 3 very distinct plans, we could still see her personal core values coming through clearly in those different, very diverse Odyssey plans. So the final step here, especially when we're talking about being a first-year student at the University of Denver, and part of my work as the first-year seminar faculty member and mentor, is to think about how these plans intersect with the life that you want to live at the University of Denver. So thinking about these plans and these possible futures, how can we try out and prototype and experiment with these different visions of your future, and while staying aware of your values in order to plan the best, most meaningful future for you? So for a student who wanted to either be an FBI analyst or a social worker for the children or a world traveler who made a difference, the first thing I would say is let's find some courses, right? Let's find some classes. What disciplines engage with these different Odyssey plans? So maybe a criminology class or a sociology class. Thinking about how can we start to test out and try out the disciplines that will lead to the careers that she had expressed interest in her Odyssey plan. So that first piece is academic. Then I might recommend that she look into working with the Center for Community Engagement at DU. So DU's vision is to be a great private institution dedicated to the public good. So the Center for Community Engagement could connect this student with organizations who are seeking students to support their work, and she could establish relationships in the community. The Center for Community Engagement could also help her locate classes that combine the academic piece with some community engagement work. So she could be working in class and then also going out into the field and engaging with the community. So that would be the second thing I would recommend. And then for her third Odyssey plan, being a world traveler who makes a difference, I would have her think ahead toward her study abroad plans. DU has a fantastic study abroad program. So how can that fit into her academic plan, and where might she like to go, and how might that engage with all of these passions and interests that she has expressed in her Odyssey plan? So the goal, again, is to think about what are those values, what are those different paths you might take, and then how can we take some early steps to begin to activate both those values and those passions and interests as a first-year student at the University of Denver. Thank you so much for attending this workshop today. I hope that you will take some time to look into the variety of really interesting first-year seminar courses that'll be available in the fall quarter. If the content that I shared in this workshop related to the 4-dimensional student experience sounds interesting, you can look for 4D first year seminars when you're searching for classes. There'll be 8 of those sections available. I'm teaching one of them that'll be available for students in the fall. So it's been a pleasure. I'm grateful for your time here in the workshop. Please feel free to reach out with any questions about the activities we did or about first year seminar. My information is at the bottom of the slide, but thank you for attending and I hope to see you on campus.